Following the failed attempt by the Jedi to arrest Palpatine and prevent the Sith Lord from continuing to implement his twisted machinations and control over the galaxy, public opinion seemed to turn almost overnight against the Jedi. Although their order had undertaken to maintain peace and justice as guardians of the Republic for roughly 25,000 years, many across the galaxy, including senators, citizens, and even the clone troopers themselves, accepted Palpatine's accusations against the Jedi without suspicion. Fully backing Palpatine's denunciation of the Jedi as traitors, many across the galaxy simply accepted that the Jedi had conspired to bring down the Republic, and therefore went along with the legalized extermination of the Jedi as set out in Palpatine's proclamation. To understand why the galaxy at large was all too ready to trust Palpatine in declaring the Jedi as traitors and accepted their total annihilation, it's necessary to look at how the galaxy came to hate the Jedi both immediately prior and during the Clone Wars. In this video expose, I will explain why the galaxy grew to hate the Jedi and trust Supreme Chancellor Palpatine in his plan to legally exterminate their order. To understand why so few within the galaxy questioned Palpatine's accusation that the Jedi were conspirators in the downfall of the Republic, requiring their being hunted down and killed, it isn't just necessary to look at why the Jedi became hated, but also why Palpatine became so trusted. As the Revenge of the Sith novelization makes clear, by the time of the Battle of Coruscant in the final days of the conflict, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine was the most admired man in the galaxy. Citizens of the Republic saw him alone as having unrivaled political and leadership skills that were capable of not just keeping the Republic together during the war, but also giving the Republic its will to fight on. For many, Palpatine wasn't just respected as the Republic's head of state, but beloved for his efforts in the war. Therefore, when their beloved leader labeled the Jedi as enemies of the Republic, the galaxy was ready to believe the one who saved them from the Separatist threat. But it was also far more than just trust in Palpatine, as 3 years of fighting in the galaxy-wide conflict caused many to grow suspicious of the Jedi, wherein many in the Republic didn't just look upon them with suspicion, but with fear and hatred as well. And there was perhaps no greater point of suspicion to generate anti-Jedi sentiment than the fact that the leader of the Separatists, and viewed as the greatest perpetrator of the war, was none other than Count Dooku, a former Jedi. In the final days of the Clone War, when speaking to a group of senators about the rising tide of cynicism against the Jedi developing across the galaxy, and the belief that the Jedi were planning to keep the war going for their own benefit, Palpatine gave voice to the true cause of suspicion that the senators there failed to acknowledge. As part of his manipulations against the ancient enemies of the Sith, Palpatine was quick to point out that it was reasonable to suspect the Jedi's motivations in the war, given that, quote, a former Jedi is at the helm of the Separatist movement. Of course, Palpatine would then feign a defense of the Order, but nonetheless, the point was clear. Senators could do nothing to prevent the citizens of the Republic from believing that the Jedi were using the war for their own benefit, given that the Jedi Order was on one side and a so-called former Jedi was on the other. It was a misgiving that Palpatine would use when giving his declaration of a new order, pointing to the Jedi using one of their own in Dooku to play the part of their enemy's leader. This allowed many across the galaxy to suspect that the Jedi were playing both sides of the war to their own benefit, when truly, it'd been the Sith utilizing that role the entire time. But it wasn't just the apparent friend becomes foe path of Dooku that caused the galaxy to become suspicious of the Jedi and push them towards accepting their extermination, but that of other fallen Jedi as well. As the Revenge of the Sith novelization made clear, whispers began to circulate throughout the galaxy that the Jedi were not entirely as they seemed or promoted. Many pointed to other Jedi who'd fallen to the dark side during the war, Jedi such as Sora Bulk, Deepa Billaba, and Quinlan Vos, all masters who were supposed to represent the best of the Order. Because these Jedi not only joined the Separatists, but also murdered their former comrades and massacred civilians, Republic citizens believed that the Jedi couldn't be trusted, and that even the greatest among them could just suddenly snap. The occurrence of these Jedi falling to the dark side during the war led many to distrust and hate the Jedi as an order capable of more evil than good. A great source of distrust was the war itself, with many not solely pointing to the fact that Dooku may be a double agent to the benefit of the Jedi, but to actual actions taken that could be interpreted as the Order having purposefully created a conflict to solidify their authority over the Republic. For example, many remote worlds saw the Clone War as an attempt by the Jedi to dominate the galaxy. For these worlds, the fact that it was the Jedi who invaded Geonosis to ignite the conflict could not be ignored, pushing many to believe that it was the Jedi who started and wanted the conflict. That two within the Order might have been sentenced to death for their espionage upon the planet was seen as far too convenient of an excuse, and certainly not worth dragging the entire galaxy into war. The fact that the Jedi seemed all too eager to take up leadership of the Clone Army further promoted the idea that the Jedi were in on the initiation of hostilities for their own benefit. These suspicions connected to the Jedi actions at the start of the war later manifested in further accusations by the end of the conflict. For example, when the Jedi kept their assault on the Separatists in the Battle of Belderone a secret from both the Senate and the office of the Supreme Chancellor, many within the Senate felt that the Jedi were rogue agents, taking the war into their own hands to promote ulterior motives. The act of secrecy was a legitimate attempt by the Jedi Order to capture Darth Sidious without tipping off his allies on Coruscant. But with evidence beginning to pile up against the Jedi through the machinations of the Sith, many actions taken by the Jedi in the war started to appear as though the Order was extending and using the war for their own purposes. The longer the conflict dragged on, with billions falling in the war every day, the distrust and resentment against the Jedi slowly grew into hatred, wherein their extermination under Palpatine's new order was accepted. Finally, it must be understood that one of the sources of anti-Jedi sentiment that would come to its apex by the end of the Clone War was a direct result of Sith influence. This was the successful attempt to make the Jedi Order completely affiliated with the growing corruption and disorder of the Republic. Since the days of Darth Bane, and certainly by the time of Darth Plagueis and his master Darth Tenebrous, the Sith worked to not only undermine the Republic by promoting corruption within the Senate and lawlessness within the Outer Rim, but also tirelessly worked to connect the Jedi to all of it, making the Jedi and the corrupt Republic synonymous. Of course, the Sith plan worked perfectly, as the Jedi became shackled by their obedience to the Senate in the Republic's final decades. The Jedi Order was all too happy to defend and uphold the galactic government, even when their decisions may be viewed as wrong-headed or in conflict with Jedi tenets. As animosity and distrust towards the Republic ignited into the Separatist crisis, these same emotions were levied onto the Jedi Order, which was viewed as nothing more than the attack arm of the corrupt Senate. In combination with the previously mentioned points, many within the galaxy came to accept that it was time to leave the corruption of the Republic behind, and because the Jedi were so connected to the Republic, many had no problem in abandoning the Jedi Order as well. So there we have it, why the galaxy grew to distrust the Jedi and follow Palpatine. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. Or perhaps follow us on Twitter at SW Reading Club for updates regarding the channel. Or support the channel through Patreon for access to exclusive hangouts and book discussions. If not for me, for things that weren't worth it.